You may have heard various English teachers and bloggers speculating about the idea that people rather acquire a new language than learn it. And because of that, everyone is now hyping the idea that we should learn the new language as babies do. They don't know the language at all when they are born, but step after step they quickly acquire a lot of vocabulary. And they don't learn any grammar rules, but they still know verb tenses, noun endings, and other tricky things that cause so much pain for adult ESL learners. And the idea is simple. They say you need to acquire language just like a child would do. Just immerse yourself into English-speaking society for as long as you can, and you will succeed. Well, there is one little trick. You are not a 2-year-old child, and your brain doesn't work the same way. We actually acquire language rather than learn it. I can confirm that. You can learn by heart the meanings of 100,000 words. And you can also learn all possible grammar rules, but unless you actually go and speak some English with some other people, you will never speak that language. But please don't be hooked to that nice sounding rubbish that you should learn the language as a child would do. There are literally hundreds of various methods, and each of them has a course or a book that they want you to buy. Let me explain why these won't lead to anything good for an adult learner. First of all, you already know your native language, and this will not allow you to acquire the new language as a child would do. A 2-year-old child just doesn't have any other choice. At first they cry or smile to communicate with us, then their brains develop and they start using other methods of communication. And parents actually teach them words and phrases. I can't imagine an adult English learner coming to the US or UK, visiting a restaurant and starting crying to get some food. Well, it may work, but I bet it's not something you will want to do. So a child has no other choice but to learn new words and use them to communicate. You already know your native language and your brain will not bother remembering new ways to call the same objects. You will need to make some effort and learn this somehow first. Imagine another example. You come to China to live and you don't understand a word in Chinese. Will you acquire the language just by roaming around the city and trying to say something to all those people? You may do this for 30 years with close to zero success. So how can you actually acquire the new language? First of all, you should remember that learning a language is always a process that combines developing several skills at the same time: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. If your teacher doesn't work to provide you with proper methods to develop all those skills, you maybe should find another teacher. Now pay attention to the last skill on my list, speaking. This is actually the most important skill and the stage that combines all other skills and lets you see your progress. Whenever you learn something new by reading a text, doing an exercise, or watching an educational video, try incorporating everything that you've just learned in your speaking. That's why it's important to go out there and speak to someone and listen to other speakers. You take everything that you've learned and use it in your speech. By doing this, you bring the passive knowledge into your active use. That's what's called active and passive vocabulary. Passive vocabulary is the set of words that you know the meaning of, and you can understand them when you hear someone else say them. Active vocabulary is the set of words that you know and can remember at a certain time when you need them. This is what's called acquiring a new language. It's actually bringing it up from your passive knowledge to your active use. But the problem is that to successfully do this, you need to have something in your passive knowledge. If your knowledge of English is absolutely blank, there is zero chance that you can succeed in acquiring the English language. So I would say there are two super important levels of learning English, or basically any other language. The first level is when you actually learn something new. New words, new grammar, new idioms, or new pronunciation rules, but it's all worthless without applying the second level, which is speaking and practicing that language. Only practicing English can convince your brain that the things that you learned before are worth keeping in active memory. Otherwise, all new knowledge will quickly dive into the passive memory and then it will vanish after some time, unless you hear or use it some way. This is a very easy concept of learning any language. And now, when you know it, you can easily evaluate your teacher or tutor and identify if they succeed in incorporating those two levels in your learning. Also, understanding this simple yet important concept will save you tons of effort if you are learning English on your own without a teacher. Now you can build a plan that will be more efficient and will let you put the words and grammar that you learn into your active memory.